personal unconscious, right? I've got mine, you've got yours. It contains all of those things that happen to us that we have forgotten about, sometimes quite deliberately forgotten about, that we don't like, we repressed, we don't want to remember. But in addition to that personal unconscious, which is what Freudian psychologists work with, Jung says we all share a collective unconscious, which has been evolved with the species over the millennia. And that unconscious mind is extraordinarily powerful because it motivates things we do without our knowing that we're being so motivated. The strongest possible motivation is one you're not aware of. Right? Because you just assume it's in the nature of things. That's the way it has to be. I believe that our unconscious minds, our unconscious collective minds, have in them a desire for transcendence. Human beings are not satisfied with being themselves. We look at ourselves and we see ourselves as the Buddha saw us. Unsatisfactory. Frustrated and frustrating. Right? All human beings want to be something better than they are. Whether or not they admit it. This is an unconscious motivation. Right? They want to self-transcend. And that's what the ancient mysteries were about. And that's what modern Freemasonry is about. I know that many people, when they think of Freemasonry, think of what? Secrecy. But, we've talked about that and why that's almost inevitable. But what's the public face of Masonry? The Shriners, right? Guys with cute little fez hats who blow whistles and ride motorcycles and do good work like sponsoring hospitals for sick children. Masonry is, for many people, a social activity with good charitable purposes. It's sort of like the Rotarians with a ritual. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. That is Masonry. Because Masonry emphasizes the importance of brotherhood, right? Of interacting with one's fellow Masons on a level fashion and being on the square with them. With all human beings, but particularly, of course, with one's brother Masons. It emphasizes brotherhood and the importance of brotherhood. That's good. That's fine. But I would suggest that beneath that, there is this other urge for transcendence. And the Masonic ritual is about transcendence. It's about death and resurrection. It's about leaving the old and entering the new. It is about forsaking the darkness and finding the light. If any of you are Masons, you will recognize what I've been talking about is being straight out of Masonic practice. Right? So modern Freemasonry, whether or not we actually know it, is in fact a spiritual path. Because it's a path which offers us a way to transcendence, to personal transcendence. I'll end by telling you a little personal story about myself. As Betty mentioned, I came into co-masonry. I've never been a masculine Mason. I came straight into co-masonry. I came into it in England. And I was initiated in a lodge in England, which was a lodge that worked the ritual better than any other lodge I have ever seen in my life. They were simply superb. They had it down, right? It was a perfect performance. I was entered in that lodge. I went to the second degree in that lodge. Actually, we had come home. I had to go back to England to get the second degree. When it came time for me to get the third degree, and the third degree is the one which gives you your full Masonic stature. You aren't really fully a Mason until you get the third degree. I don't know how it is in some of your experiences who are Masons. Co-Masons don't do the degrees all at once, ever. They're separated. Well, in my case, it was separated by a couple of years because we think there are lessons to be learned in each of the degrees. All right. I took the first and second degrees in England in a lodge which worked it absolutely beautifully. I took the third degree in a lodge in this country, which I will leave nameless, which was then probably the worst ritual lodge I have ever seen in my life. People couldn't remember their lines. They couldn't even read them aloud if they had them written down. They forgot where they were in the ceremony. I was brought in at one point, and they remembered that they hadn't done something right, so I had to be set out. So they had to do it before they bring me back in again. It was a mess. Now, when I was initiated in England in this beautiful lodge, I said to myself, what have I got myself into? My wife went away and left me, and what have I done? I've joined up with a bunch of adults who are behaving like little boys. These are men and women both, right? Behaving like little boys in a club where you get sworn to secrecy. This is the silliest thing I've ever seen in my life. But I had agreed I would persevere through the third degree, take all 3 degrees. So I'm a man of my promise. So I persevered. The second degree wasn't any better, done in that beautifully, ritually experienced lodge in London. The third degree, done sloppily, disgracefully. At the end of the third degree, I suddenly realized what Masonry was. And from that point on, I was a Mason. Not just because I had been put through some ceremony, but because for me, at that point, something clicked. And I realized what Masonry was about. It was not just keeping little secrets away from other people. It was not just having a nice banquet after the meeting was over. And the only reason for the meeting was to have the banquet at the end. It was not just making contacts of a business nature. It was not just raising money for charity. Right? Masonry is about a kind of personal transformation. It doesn't always happen. But when it does, it is incommunicable. I can't tell you what it was. I can only talk about it in general terms. So I thank you all very much for letting me talk about this mysterious and very secret subject this evening.
Thank you, John, for talking about something you can't tell us about.
I do that all the time.
Would you like to answer a few questions?
I'd be pleased to hear some. Yes. I'd be entertained to hear some questions.
Yeah. He will entertain some questions.
Yeah.
Does anybody have a question? Yes, Martin.
Since you said they weren't exactly sure where Masonry originated before 1717, is there a viable theory of people who believe perhaps that it did keep going somehow underground from the 4th century through to the 1700s?
Yeah, I didn't mention that. But in fact, yes, that has also been suggested, that the ancient mysteries, although they were officially terminated, this was after Constantine became Holy Roman Emperor and